D, wait for it, delightful.
Check out the name tag. You're in my world now, Grandma.
After an amazing third season and a crazy season finale, DC Legends of Tomorrow has come back for a season 4, with Matt Ryan as John Constantine and Jess Macallan as Ava Sharpe returning as series regulars. The rest of the current members of the Legend have also come back, including Amaya, who left the Waverider but will be back as a series regular. Over the course of 3 seasons, the crew aboard the Waverider has been constantly changing, which doesn't come as a surprise since the show was designed for a rotating cast. As this show uses its unique format and premise to introduce as many characters as possible, as members of the team, temporary allies, and villains, out of the original 9 crew members that boarded the Waverider in Season 1, only 3, Sara Lance, Ray Palmer, and Mick Rory, have stuck around throughout 3 seasons. All kinds of heroes, allies, enemies, and doppelgängers visited Legends of Tomorrow. Today, we're taking a look at the costumes worn by characters on the show to see how comic book accurate they really are. So, let's find out which Legends of Tomorrow costumes, which could be better. Rip Hunter. In 2016, the Arrowverse expanded for the second time with a quirky time travel space opera type of a show titled DC's Legends of Tomorrow. A rogue time master from the 22nd century who introduced himself as Rip Hunter gathered a group of superheroes and supervillains from the 21st century and formed a team that would become known as Legends. Rip Hunter is portrayed by Arthur Darvill, the Doctor Who actor who played Rory Williams. In fact, Rip's look even seems to be inspired by the 10th Doctor, rather than his comic book counterpart, draped in a light brown coat that was previously owned by Jonah Hex. Armed with an antique-looking energy gun and a time courier, Rip Hunter looks like a mashup of Doctor Who and a Wild West outlaw. But how does his costume compare to the comics? Well, as much as I actually like Legends of Tomorrow version of Rip Hunter, he doesn't really look much like his comic book counterpart. Rip's favorite color is green, which is a prevailing color of his one-piece suit. Essentially, nothing from his comic book design made it to the show. In the comics, Rip Hunter's costume looks more like something a superhero would wear. The Atom. Ray Palmer was introduced in the 3rd season of Arrow as Oliver's adversary in business and the affairs of the heart. However, the show didn't quite know how to put Ray or the Atom to good use, and the CW started planning the Atom spin-off. The project evolved into a little ensemble show known as DC's Legends of Tomorrow. Ray Palmer was one of the heroes Rip Hunter plucked from the 21st century for his Legends team. Brandon Roth is doing an excellent job portraying the character, and the Atom seems to have found his place aboard the Waverider. However, as much as I love Ray, I'm not a big fan of his costume. Ray's costume is the powered exosuit called Atom, which he designed. The suit protects Ray from bullets, arrows, and explosives, and has a number of different offensive capabilities. Most importantly, though, it allows Ray to shrink down as well as become gigantic. The main issue with this costume is that it's bulky as hell. Nowhere near the sleek design from the comics, where the controls are for changing size and weight were located either in the belt buckle or the gloves. Would you say it's too much to hope for a more comic book accurate design and hopefully make its way onto Legends of Tomorrow? Captain Cold. Leonard Snart, aka Captain Cold, used to be a world-class thief from Central City, who operated with his trusty partner Mick Rory, aka Heatwave. The duo often caused trouble for the Scarlet Speedster, but eventually they became friends. Leonard Snart had a change of heart after joining Rip Hunter and the Legends aboard the Waverider. Although the character was popular on The Flash, his popularity only increased once he joined Legends of Tomorrow. However, while everyone loved Captain Cold, his costume wasn't exactly the most highly praised design in the Arrowverse, to put it mildly. On the show, Snart wore a dark blue parka, a pair of goggles, and he was armed with his cold gun. Unfortunately, his parka didn't come with the character's trademark fur hood that we're used to seeing in the comic book pages. Plus, using more light blue colors definitely wouldn't have hurt. As much as we love Captain Cold and Wentworth Miller, this costume is just too dark, generic, and bland. But thanks to Miller's outstanding performance, not even a mediocre costume could have made Captain Cold any less fascinating. Interestingly and lucky, the costume design for Snart's Earth X doppelganger improved on some of these details. Heatwave. The inseparable duo, Captain Cold and Heatwave, started off as thieves and occasional enemies on The Flash, one obsessed with ice and the other with fire. These two sure made an iconic pair of criminals. However, once they joined Rip Hunter's crusade aboard the Waverider, they slowly started to change their ways. Mick Rory was a bit more reluctant to become a hero, and he still is, but he comes through when needed. Heatwave has been with the Legends since the very beginning, and he's grown into a new, better man. Still, there's one thing about Heatwave that hasn't improved yet, and that's his costume. Just like his partner in crime, Captain Cold, poor Heatwave has fallen victim to very poor costume design. Actually, there isn't any costume to speak of. Heatwave's attire consists of plain clothes, a brownish jacket, and a pair of goggles, which is a damn shame since the comic book version of the character has a pretty distinguishable costume. Heatwave combines white and orange in his outfit that is designed to protect from fire. Now, I'm not saying that an exact replica would have worked on TV, but a bit more creativity and thought should have been given to Mick's on-screen costume. Hawkman. Hawkman and his better half, Hawkgirl, were among the starting cast of Legends of Tomorrow. In fact, the entire first season revolved around them and their sworn immortal enemy, Vendel Savage. Still, neither of the three characters were received well by fans. In the end, once Vendel Savage was killed in 3 separate time periods, the star-crossed lovers left the Waverider and haven't been seen since. While Hawkman and Hawkgirl were mostly disliked because of how their characters and storyline were written, their costumes certainly didn't work in their favor. Hawkman's costume consisted of a pair of brown leather pants with a brown leather top, as well as a brown mace and a light brown mask. Do you notice a pattern here? Everything is brown! To put it simply, it's undistinctive and monotonous, a complete opposite of Hawkman's costume from the comics, which combines green and yellow while incorporating Egyptian decorations to stay true to the character's origins. And don't even get me started on that toy mace. The comic book Hawkman has a cool costume, and his mace actually looks like something that could cause some serious damage. Though an exact replica of the comic book costume wouldn't work on TV, what we got wasn't even the best solution. Zari. Zari Tomez is one of those Arrowverse characters that doesn't strictly exist in the comics in the same way, but is kind of based on an existing character. As Mark Guggenheim clarified it, Zari isn't from the comics or any other DC Comics show, but she's not an original character either. Got that? Good. Zari draws inspiration from the character named Adriana Tomaz, also known as Isis in the DC Comics universe. Adriana was married to Black Adam, and she transformed into Isis by tapping into the power of the amulet of Isis. In the Arrowverse, Zari Tomaz is the owner of the Air Totem, which she inherited from her brother. Now, when Zari first joined the team aboard the Waverider, she had her totem, but no costume. And even though the Legends used their costumes sparingly, the rest of the team felt that she should at least have one. The first costume Zari put on was white and kind of looked like something you would find out of an ABBA music video. Before you ask, no, it wasn't the one Here I Go Again episode. The only thing the costume had in common with the comic book version was the color. As for Zari's second costume, it looks more TV friendly, but it doesn't even try to be anything like the comic book design. Hawkgirl. The entire first season of Legends of Tomorrow revolved around Hawkgirl, and yet she will go down in history as one of the most boring and infuriating characters we have ever had the displeasure to see in the Arrowverse. She was constantly made into a damsel in distress, and rarely seemed to have any clue what she was doing, and apparently couldn't function without getting attached to the nearest male specimen in her general vicinity. And, as if all that wasn't enough, for pretty much everyone to dislike her, they put her in a horrible costume that looked both ridiculous and impractical. First of all, it's so frickin' dark. Everything is a brownish and boring color. There's nothing that stands out about the design. Second of all, What's up with these shoulder pads? How does one move their arms with these huge shoulder pads? And what about the belt and that pouch sticking out of her right leg? None of this would work in combat. And on top of that, it's not even nice to look at. On the other hand, the costume Hawkgirl wears in the comics is eye-catching, brighter, and uses more than one color. No matter which version of the comic book costume you compare it to, the costume Hawkgirl wore on Legends of Tomorrow doesn't measure up. Steel. As a skilled historian, Dr. Nate Haywood was able to deduce that an aberration-created reality was starting to cement in the timeline, and with the help of Oliver Queen, he located the submerged Waverider in 2016. Nate ended up saving the Legends and helping them save the timeline, so they made him a new member of the team. Nate gained the ability to transform his skin into steel after receiving a dose of modified biomolecular enhancer. He was dubbed Steel, reminiscent of his comic book counterpart, Citizen Steel. Nate sketched his own suit, and his best buddy, Ray Palmer, built him one. As much as we hate to criticize the boys' skills in costume making, we are here to compare the costumes to their comic book counterparts, and Nate's costume doesn't quite hit the mark. The colors are mostly there in a way, as well as details like the white star on his chest and that thing sticking out of the top of his head. However, this version of the costume isn't as sleek as the one from the comics. It's not one stainless steel skin suit that adapts to the curvature of Steel's body. The costume Nate wears on the show consists of multiple pieces, looks bulkier, and the shoulder pads and forearm guards look kind of ridiculous. Cronos. Back in Season 1 of Legends of Tomorrow, the resident pirate-turned-novelist Mick Rory was taken by the Time Masters, brought to the Vanishing Point, brainwashed, and trained over the course of several lifetimes, turned into a bounty hunter known as Cronos, and released upon his former teammates to hunt them down. Eventually, Mick was able to break away from the Time Masters' control and return to his team. Though they attempted to regain control of him, Mick resisted their efforts by focusing on his team. Ever since his Cronos days, we've been witnessing Mick develop into unexpected directions. He can still be quite the jerk, but he can also be genuinely sweet. Unfortunately, much like his Heatwave costume, Mick's Cronos costume wasn't the best design ever to come out of the Arrowverse. To say that the costume wasn't inspired by the character's comic book appearance would be a gross understatement. The Cronos we got on Legends of Tomorrow had nothing in common with the comic book counterpart. Not the costume, and certainly not the identity. The man known as Cronos in the comics is David Clinton, and his costume is not a bulky SWAT suit coupled with a helmet inspired by Darth Vader. Commander Steel. Nate Haywood's grandpa, Henry Haywood, was one of the members of the Justice Society of America that appeared in the second season of Legends of Tomorrow. Henry Haywood was entrusted with a piece of the Spear of Destiny, and, being a flight commander for NASA, he managed to hide the piece on the moon. As Commander Steel, Henry operated with his team in order to protect himself on their missions. He used a specialized uniform. This costume combined blue and red with brown straps going along the suit. The most recognizable parts of the suit were the belt buckle with US engraved on it and the chest buckle decorated with an engraved silver star. To conceal his identity, Henry used an aviator's helmet and goggles. Needless to say, I just described what doesn't sound at all like the costume that Commander Steel wears in the comics. The Commander Steel from the DC Comics universe has a sleek costume almost identical to that of Citizen Steel. However, the Commander Steel from the comics also has a cybernetic steel frame, meaning his skeleton was replaced by steel alloy tubing. Since the Legends of Tomorrow version of the character had no powers, it's possible that this change warranted the changes in the costume. Even so, the costume they went with just doesn't look appealing. Our Man. The first season of Legends of Tomorrow ended on a huge cliffhanger. Out of the blue, a man who introduces himself as Rex Tyler and a member of the Justice Society of America appears in front of Rip Hunter and his team to warn them not to get on the Waverider or they will die. Avid DC Comics fans immediately recognize the name and associate it with the hero who goes by the name Our Man. Sadly, Our Man was killed off very early on in Season 2 and hasn't been seen since. A strange decision given that he was portrayed by suit star Patrick J. Adams. But hey, perhaps now that Adams is no longer working on Suits, the CW can find a way to bring Our Man back at least for an arc. That being said, I do have one small suggestion to make if they ever do decide to call up Adams. Please give him a new costume. There's nothing offensive or particularly horrible about Our Man's costume, but there's nothing that makes it memorable either. It's one of the most boring costumes on the show. Although there are some similarities between the costume Our Man wore on Legends of Tomorrow and the costume his comic book counterpart sports, the comic book costume has details like the hourglass necklace and the unusual mask/cape that make it memorable.
Hey nerds, if you like this video, go ahead and click that Geek What icon and subscribe. If you want to see more videos like this, join me every Tuesday where you can check out the list.